Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast with Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. Today we have a special guest. This is Chris. Chris, if you want to do a brief intro on yourself.
Sure. I appreciate you having me. My name's Chris Lee. I was a former Special Forces medical sergeant. Now I'm a full-time performance coach, trying to help people set a good path for their future. So that's what I do now.
Yeah, absolutely. And people hear special forces, and I'm sure people kind of like get intimidated and are very curious of what that entails. So, like, what was special forces like through your experience, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, good question. Uh, when I decided to join the military, I spent quite a bit of time kind of researching what job I would prefer, and kind of landed on something that I thought would be incredibly challenging, but also pretty rewarding, and that happened to be special forces. And so, throughout my process, I had some hiccups trying to get a special forces contract. But once I got to basic training, a couple of recruiters approached me and said, "Would you like to try out at some point?" Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of the beginning of my process there. But what does special forces mean? For me, it was they their job is primarily to train other people to handle situations themselves, and then quietly exit. That's kind of ideal what they do. But I personally wanted to pursue something that I knew was incredibly challenging and that I knew success wasn't guaranteed. Despite giving my best efforts, I still might come up short. That's kind of what drew me to SF and trying to try out. But it kind of all worked out, and I was able to get through the pipeline and all that stuff. And so it was incredibly rewarding. I met some of the best dudes you'd ever meet in your life, and they're still really good friends to this day. And so I'm pretty grateful for my opportunity to work with those kind of guys.
That's awesome, man. And obviously, thank you for your service. And it's so cool to see like special forces or guys that are like high level like jujitsu and like guys that are badass are always so calm and there's no ego. And I always think that's such a cool dynamic because you would assume the person that is capable of all those things would have like a big head.
I've noticed that too, but I think the guys that are at that kind of caliber, like black belts in some kind of martial art, or have have become fluent in the language of violence. They don't need an ego because they don't have anything to prove at that point. Um, so yeah, I think it's a good observation, and I found that to be the case also. The more high caliber guys are pretty unassuming and not super huge either. But if you see them do work, they're pretty dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've read a lot about like Navy SEALs and special forces, and I've seen too that it's not always the fittest person, right? Like you actually need to be fit overall, mentally, physically, emotionally. How do you kind of relate to that and the people you saw get through obviously with you as well?
There's definitely a mental component to it. When one of our sergeant majors was sitting down with our team at one point, and he reminded us, Green Berets are selected from the neck up, and that kind of always stuck with me, and I liked that about where I worked is you were expected to be kind of a higher caliber, not only physically. I mean, that's just kind of a given, but also mentally. You should be able to think outside the box and kind of think for yourself and be able to operate independently if you need to. But yeah, there's it's more than just physical. You have to be pretty smart and also emotionally stable. And kind of when I say that, it's like um, I think there's this like kind of new I don't know, new interest in stoicism. And I think sometimes people confuse stoicism for being completely lacking emotion. Uh, so I don't think that's really the case. I think a more accurate description of stoicism is rather like feeling all of your emotions, but having them in check, and don't let your emotions dictate how do you go about making decisions. And that's kind of like it's required in the job that I used to do is be be able to feel everything, but also be able to put all that in check and think through the problem logically.
Yeah, I think that's so true, and especially with like hustle culture and even stoicism, yeah, like you kind of either you try and block out all problems and you try and avoid all adversity. It's like you're gonna get hit with stuff regardless of how you live, where you live, what's going on. So to be able to navigate that and regulate your mood is so much more important. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And how would you say special forces kind of relates to life as a whole?
Um, a motto that I picked up, relatively recently is how you do anything is how you do everything, and I think that played a big part in my journey in the Army. Is attention to detail, understanding that the effort that you put forth in tasks, even if you think that they're small, is actually a reflection of your character. And so, um, how does that relate to civilian life or normal life? I think it's still applicable. Like the work you choose to do or the effort that you put forth towards tasks is a reflection of your character. It's not a reflection of the task. And so if you're sweeping or running a Fortune 500 company, it's kind of the same thing. It's how you do it is I don't know, a reflection of who you are as a person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with the coaching, would you say like were you someone that would have gotten to coaching if you didn't go into special forces, or do you think that kind of gave you an added confidence?
Um, like looking back, as I've gotten older, I realized kind of the importance of coaching um, and utilizing mentors in some capacity. The Army is structured in such a way that you should have mentors above you that teach you based on their experience and their how they've gone through situations. And so the mentorship philosophy is kind of ingrained in you as you're going through Army stuff, because the people above you should be um, invested in your success. And so how does that translate outside of the military? I think pulling the trigger and investing in yourself by either hiring a coach or seeking out somebody else who may be a little bit further down the road than you are is super important, because um, kind of the people that you surround yourself with is a good indicator of kind of where you're headed. And if you're going to surround yourself with people that are of higher caliber, and you can do that intentionally, like why not? That's kind of my thought on that.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And if you kind of just want to go into like what your coaching entails and how you kind of navigate that.
Yeah, so I kind of settled on I try to help people with their long term goals, particularly like 5 year goals. But the first question I really ask them is, tell me, who do you want to become? I think that identity piece, figuring out exactly the kind of person you want to be, is the foundation and the value system on which everything else is stacked. So if you can tell me who you want to be, then we can figure out where you want to be by really establishing specific 5 year goals. Once that's all kind of nailed down, and I usually tell people to dream really really big, because 5 years is a long time, and if you can stay consistent, you can get a lot done. So once their 5 year goals are kind of nailed down, we do like the not sexy part, which is just backwards planning. Uh, and the Army is pretty good at telling you how to backwards plan. So we figure out where you want to be in 5 years, and then we just rewind and say, okay, what has to happen this first year or this first month or this first week? And we break things down so small on a daily level that I try to shoot for tasks that are small enough that they don't require a whole lot of motivation or willpower. Uh, and that's intentional, because I think if you're relying too heavily on motivation and willpower, that bucket runs dry, and so you'll eventually stop. But if you can set the bar low enough, or set the task small enough, it doesn't require that willpower, and it's easier to ingrain into your mind that it's a habit. So once that's kind of wrapped up and we have like a good schedule of tasks that can be completed, then it's just accountability. And I think that's one of the more important parts, is ensuring that you are um, surrounding yourself with a tribe that will hold you accountable to the commitments you've made to yourself.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It sounds obviously like a great system and a great plan you have in place. And just one thing that pops in my head as you were speaking there is like, do you think social media, obviously you're on social media, do you think social media influences people to kind of get lost in what they actually want? Do you see a lot of people switching the 5 year plan?
Um, what I've found actually is people start moving towards a goal, and yeah, it was primarily influenced by either social media or friends and family or some kind of external source. And as an individual is progressing towards that goal, they make a bunch of progress and they realize, man, this isn't really what I want. I don't really want the Ferrari and the mansion. I really just want a cabin in the woods to be
Right.
quiet. And so that's why I start with the identity piece first. Tell me who you want to be. Tell me what your value system is first. Then let's start tackling the goals. Because social media is a great way for people to start comparing one another. And I don't think that's the best approach to navigating life. I think a better approach is rather like, all right, who was I yesterday? And can I be a little bit better today? And if you do that long enough, and 5, 10, 20 years, you are way ahead of where you started. And if you were consistent, you're probably way ahead of your peers anyway.
Absolutely. And what's some advice you would tell like an 18-year-old version of yourself, kind of with all that you know now?
Sure. I've been asked this a couple times, and this is kind of how I would approach that. First, get in the best shape of your life. Your health. If you're not staying healthy, not a whole lot matters. If you're sick or you're injured, that's kind of all you can focus on. So, step one, get in the best shape you can. Make it difficult for life to kill you. Step two is kind of what we talked about a minute ago. Is strive to be the calmest man in the room, or the calmest person in the room. And what that means is acknowledge your emotions, but keep them in check. Be able to acknowledge the chaos that shows up, and then act appropriately and not react emotionally. So that would be step two. And then I think the third one, there might be four. Third one would be get your finances in order, because that's one of the things you can dictate in life is the kind of job you have and the kind of skills that you're acquiring that make you more valuable in the marketplace. And you can't buy happiness, maybe, but what you can do is create enough security in your life that problems don't seem as big anymore. And then I think lastly would be surround yourself with a good tribe, a good community that expects a great deal of you. Um, Dan Pena has a quote that I love, and it's "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." And I think that's spot on. The caliber of people that you surround yourself with is a good indicator of who you're going to become. So um, I think a good tribe includes people that are willing to confront you if you're messing up and call you out if you're not meeting the commitments that you've made to yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you keep preaching tribe, and it's so funny because it's literally been circulating like my life for the past couple months here. And it's funny because I went on this like self-growth journey, a lot of to do with physical, a lot to do with mental, and I isolated myself for probably like a solid year. And I think personally I needed that. And now I'm kind of like reaching out and attracting, like you're saying, like a good tribe in my life. And I see it's the progress from that too, because of course I've had experiences, they've had experiences, and the learning gap that you could kind of close is insurmountable. It's awesome.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And particularly if you are kind of all headed in the same direction, maybe not the exact same path, but generally the same direction. That's an absolute game changer. When you all pretty much have the same mission, it's it can be it can be rather comforting knowing that you're not on this journey by yourself, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even hearing you talk there, kind of, and it goes back to the teams as well. Like, how do you find people? And I feel like it's a young man issue. I mean, maybe not as much in today's society with, again, that's a whole different topic, but ego, I feel like can be a whole, it's just a mess for people. How do you kind of find people finding their ego in check? Because at the same time, you don't want to lack confidence.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that, and that kind of goes back to the first part of our conversation. It's the guys that are no the guys or gals, the people that know their capability don't have much of an ego, but they're pretty confident, and they don't have to scream it from the rooftops. It's just they exude it, and so the ego thing kind of sorts itself out when you reach a level of achievement. Um, you know what I mean? Like I mean, there's going to be some outliers, but I think a, a great deal of the number of the people that I've met that are high caliber and can actually uh, walk the walk uh, don't need to talk very loudly. You know, they're usually pretty humble and I don't know, well
No, that's a good
mannered.
point. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because they're doers, right? So like there isn't as much talking involved. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And what would you have as some tips for people like who feel lost and want to make changes and kind of like where they could start? Again, you said obviously to get in shape, but yeah, if you have any others.
Yeah, I think the biggest step is having a direction for your life. I think more often than not, people are just kind of wandering, and they end up reacting to life. And as a result, as as years pass and progress, they get to a point where like, man, this isn't the fairy tale that I had wanted. And I would say it's probably because you didn't plan it. Um, life is going to happen whether you plan for it or not. So you might as well make a plan and do your best to act the plan because that gives you a greater opportunity to kind of direct how your life goes. And of course, sometimes things happen that are unexpected or unanticipated, but you are still you are still better off having a semblance of a plan and a general direction for your life than just kind of meandering. Um, and I mean, let's be honest, like you can always earn another dollar, but you can't ever get a minute back. So the minutes that you're spending on whatever in your life is that's actually your vote on what you value. So if you, if you say you value learning new things and getting in shape and stuff like that, but then I watch you all day and you just sit on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you said one thing, but your actions showed me something different. So I think this is a long-winded answer to your question, but I think what I would suggest is figure out exactly where you want to be based on who you want to be, and then create a plan. And if you get partway down the plan and you just decide to change your mind, that's okay. Um, at least you've made some progress in some area. Um, so don't just react to life. Dictate where you want your life to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And I think it's funny too, because I don't think, of course, some people are just inherently lazy, but I think there really is something too that a lot of people are just doing things that they don't want to be doing. Like having the ability to actually quit something and start something you want is it's just it creates opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree, and yeah, I wish more people would kind of take the reins of their own life and direct where they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And what keeps you going? Like, what's your deep why?
Uh, Good question. Um, I think I think it kind of boils down to one of the reasons I joined the military. Um, I had I had this sense that there was potential in me, um, and it wasn't being actualized where I was. So I joined the army, and I joined specifically to try something difficult. Um, and and that's kind of why I got out too. The Army was great; it really set me up for success. But I did want to try something different and challenge myself in a different kind of way. And it still kind of boils down to, okay, how how far can I go? Um, Physically, mentally, financially, socially, all of it. Um, yeah, how far can I push this? What's the ceiling to my potential? And so I'm still trying to explore that. And um, some days are better than others, and some days I struggle to get to the gym. But I still kind of look at this long picture of like, okay, how far can I push myself in all these areas, and what am I able to accomplish? And if I, as like some average guy, can start achieving some of these kind of cool things, uh, maybe that'll help other people to pursue it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think impact is so important, and I think a lot of us don't even realize the touch we have on other people until it's brought up, and it's crazy. And I mean, you're a living example, obviously through coaching, but just in the manner in which you live your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that like, because I'm in the same boat, like, do you think the search for your almost optimal potential ever ends?
Mm. I don't think so. Um, which is kind of scary in its own right. Because because then you have to start balancing like, all right, there is no end to this. Does that mean I have to be on all the time forever? And maybe the short answer is yeah. but uh, but I think you can tweak it, and if you fall in love with the process and the journey, that's actually what's important. So my buddy Travis and I, we climbed. I tell this story sometimes, but we climbed Kilimanjaro back in 2018, and it was great. It was a fun trip. But we were at base camp, and we were going to go summit that night. Um, but as we're at base camp, like sipping coffee and stuff, from across the camp, we hear this guy screaming, and he's like, we look over, and he's got both fists over his head, and he's just like stoked. He's like, I did it. I climbed the mountain. And we kind of look at each other, and like we were both already thinking, okay, what's the next adventure? What's the next challenge that we're going to do? And we hadn't even summited Kilimanjaro yet. And so that's a little bit of the mentality that some people take on, is like, all right, we really just love the struggle. We love the process. And I think, so to answer your question, I think if you can fall in love with the process of self-improvement or challenging yourself, then yeah, the journey never ends. And you'll always be trying to incrementally improve yourself and reach a little bit further within your potential. And um, I think that's okay, but it can also be dangerous because, um, like in that particular example, we weren't very present either. And so we were in this we were in this incredible place, but we weren't really there. We weren't soaking it really in. Um, so I think if you can somehow balance the two, be present, but also seek out those new adventures all the time, then I think you're in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that like a degree that you wouldn't even like. It's so funny that you say that. Like I'm been planning. I do like crazy races, and I did a bodybuilding show in the parking lot to my bodybuilding show. I booked my like time my first marathon. Like that's just how I work, and it's
Yeah,
the same thing. But it's so true. It's finding like the things that will keep you grounded to actually enjoy what you're doing.
yeah,
What
yeah.
are some things that you do personally?
Personally, so I really like weight training. That's one of the things that um, it's like you can view your body as like a piece of art, and the weight training is actually, it takes months and months and months to actually start to sculpt appropriately. And so that's kind of how I look at it. I enjoy the process because it's very slowly chiseling away at the marble, right? So that's one thing. Although I've dialed that back a little bit because I just got into jujitsu in December, and I've really fallen in love with that. and that forces you to be present, because if you got if you got some stressor in your life, and then you go out on the mat and your buddy is trying to choke you out or break your elbows, you can't be thinking about the thing that's stressing you out. You've got like very immediate things that you're dealing with. And so I've kind of liked it for that aspect, that it's a really violent form of meditation, I guess.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed pursuing jujitsu, and so that's one of the things I've been doing lately. And then kind of the business thing. That's like I'm learning something new every day, and trying to get better at the things that I'm not very good at, which is a lot when it comes to business, and finding ways to maybe delegate or outsource. And that's kind of an interesting practice in me, because I like to do things myself, because then I don't have anybody else to blame if it goes south, and it's held to like the standard that I have. But kind of letting some of that go, and outsourcing some of the work has been stressful, but also kind of liberating too, because it's forcing me to let go of some things, and relinquish some control. And it also frees up some time, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like this podcast, it's funny you say that because my buddy edits it, and I knew like learning to edit, learning to sit down, I was like, it's just not, it's gonna drive me nuts. And I was like, he's very good at it. He pays attention to detail. I was like, this is perfect. And I'll only, like relinquishing that power and freeing up your time is something that a lot of people have difficulty with, but from doing it, I've found it easier and easier, and it's a game changer.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's been, and then you start running into the problem with like, all right, well now I have some free time on my hands, and I have to. I've found that rest days, or a lot of free time is not great for me. I need to keep doing something. So
And lastly, what would you say is the hardest thing you overcome? It could be in SEALs or just in life as a whole.
hardest thing I've ever overcome. Um, I think I think one of the good lessons that I learned going through like the Q course is, so after selection, when I got picked up, uh, the special forces qualification course for me was 3 years long. And that was because I went the medic route, which adds another 9 months onto the whole process. So having to show up every day and and perform it at like your best ability every day for 3 years to to get the hat, get the green beret. Um, that was kind of the lesson that helped shape some of my coaching philosophy is, um, have that big picture in mind of what you want to achieve, but focus on like the 25-meter target, the thing right in front of you, to to ensure that you're not overwhelmed every day. Um, so what's the hardest thing I had to overcome? That was one of them. Just the longevity of the Q course, and trying to stay um, performing at a kind of a high caliber every day for like the marathon that is the Q course. But it was one of those lessons that was good to learn, because now it's like, okay, I am capable of kind of the longevity, the long game in certain endeavors. So how can I apply that to other areas? Just thinking more long term with stuff.
No, so it sounds like delayed gratification really is what it comes down to. And when
Yeah,
you can nail that down, it's just things really change.
absolutely, game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, man, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing and just the manner in which you live your life. It's inspiring. Of
I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here. So thanks so much. I'd love to do it again.
course, both. Thank you.